Even though they were left rather ambiguous, the shinobi wars extending past the foundations of the villages shaped each village and our entire cast into how we know them today. And there being 3 entire wars prior to the more well-established 4th one, which war actually had the strongest set of combatants, and who were the top 5 strongest soldiers in each war. Well, today, my friend Sage and I are joined together again to solve this problem. So you guys all know him. I've been on his channel, he's been on my channel. So you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and do a bit of the layout for this video?
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to be back on the channel. I think whenever Vershu and Sage get together, it's always a good vid. So you guys are in for a treat. And for this video, basically, we're just going to be going over the top 5 characters in each war. Now, they must have participated to some level in the war. They don't have to be full participants, but at least partial participants. So, for example, Madara was technically alive during the 1st and 2nd Shinobi War, as well as the 3rd, but he was like hidden away. He wasn't participating, so he's not going to be included in this. So, basically, we're going to take the strongest who participated in each war, and then kind of go into the strengths of the wars in total whenever we get to the end. But yeah, so that's basically it.
Yeah, so we can go and start with the first Great Shinobi War, and beginning there, this war likely broke out and sometime after Madara's departure and the end of Tobirama's life, although many characters like Hashirama's involvement are totally unknown, along with many of the other like starting Kage like Reto, who could be implied to be stronger than some of the other ones if you use like the 4 data book, making more of a note about his power than the other ones, I guess. But yeah, so we don't really know all too many people who are involved here, but the ones we do know, the strongest one's going to be Tobirama. Therefore, in first place, we have Tobirama, who upon his introduction will be brought back through Orochimaru in an inferior Edo Tensei body, nowhere near his full power state that would have fought in the first war, yet even with such restraint, Tobirama demonstrated that he's more than capable of not only combo attacking with his brother and base Hashirama, but even keeping pace and pressing old man Hiruzen through even like his basic water style jutsu like his water wall, a jutsu that can fully overpower Hiruzen's dragon flame bombs, which are actually stated to be the strongest fire style in the war according to the anime profile guides, which is just very befitting for his title of Hokage, which is something that forces the first fan book to make a couple notes on. The most important would be how the Hokage title stands at the peak of not only Konoha but the world at large, as stated 3 separate times, which would align with the reverence of such a title that Kabuto, a nationally recognized spy, remarks makes one the strongest of the 5 principal territories. Applying this to not only Hiruzen, but even this heavily weakened Tobirama shouldn't be inconsistent either, seeing as the bystanding Anbu, after witnessing Tobirama overpower the strongest fire style in the world using only a singular sign, water wall, when Kakashi, the top jutsu master, requires 2, and following up with a water dragon stating this is what it takes to be Hokage, implying that this Tobirama has what it takes to be Hokage in his weakened state and by virtue standing among the peak of the shinobi world, which is something Tobirama did during his very own reign as Kage, where he would command many high-level Konoha teams through the First Great Ninja War, including his own escort team comprised of young elite shinobi like Hiruzen, Danzo, Kagami, and yet still the possibility of Tobirama having to be the decoy for the squad would have been preposterous, considering, quote, there is no greater shinobi in Konoha as professed by Danzo, further pushing this already obvious notion that regardless of your interpretations, Tobirama during his era, following the disappearance of Madara and the death of his brother, would have been standing at the peak of the shinobi world, which is likely due to many of his efforts within the very war where, he would battle and likely beat the most infamous criminals in all of Kumogakure's history, which we'll talk to, with his water style also being displayed upon an even higher standard. The 1 Decade 100 Ninja Guide states that Tobirama used to flood entire battlefields of shinobi through like tsunamis using other high-level water style like his water lance and things like that are like, and that like the water lance is also just potentially like considered to be able to cut like anything according to the very same guide. So when you couple this with a potential reputation of using Edo Tensei to further utilize his kamikaze style bombers and whatnot with tandem paper bombs, it's no wonder why he would have stood among the elites of the world and why he's probably just the strongest here. But do you want to go and go to our second spot?
Yeah, so basically, to no one's surprise, number 2 is going to be Hiruzen. Now, if you wanted to be really generous to Hiruzen, what you could say is that he kind of claims that there's no stronger shinobi in the village than himself, or I mean, I'm sorry, that there's no stronger shinobi present, like in their squad, than himself, which you could be generous and say that that applies to Tobirama, but for all the reasons that Virtue laid out, I think that's unlikely. But I do think he should be above basically everybody else, just by virtue of being able to step into that role as Hokage. So the fact that Hiruzen is able to be considered for the Hokage position, which would be replacing Tobirama, who stands at the top of the shinobi world, would mean that he's at least in a low relative state in regards to like Tobirama's power, with Tobirama probably just having a massive experience advantage, and then probably similar jutsu arsenal, etc. But that being said, I think he very clearly should be in this number 2 spot above our number 3, which I'll pass back to you, Virtue.
Yeah, so the number 3rd one's actually really quick to discuss, and that would be the second Raikage. And you might be wondering, second Raikage? I don't even remember this fool. Well, yeah, he is a bit irrelevant. He actually is the one that got ambushed alongside Tobirama by the Kinkaku and Ginkaku squad or whatever. Not the Kinkaku force, but just them and their extra shinobi or whatever at their peace meeting. And the reason why they're actually above those two is, well, or why he is because, well, he escapes the encounter, but more importantly, the 4th data book makes a note of what it means to be called A, or the 4th Raikage and whatnot, and it basically means to be able to stand at the peak of Kumo. So therefore, the 2nd Raikage stood at the peak of Kumo, which would also fit with Kinkaku and Ginkaku, who are kind of implied to be just really high-level shinobi. They could have been bodyguards, which is kind of implied by how they staged a coup d'etat, meaning they were at least on the side of the 2nd Raikage prior to committing what they did, which was why they're the worst criminals in Kumo. So yeah, the 2nd Raikage is kind of just above them, which leads us into the 4th and 5th spots being Kinkaku and then Ginkaku. And the reason why I have Kinkaku above is, well, because you can use a couple things in the Darui fight to substantiate this. The first of which would be that, like, so basically in the fight, you'll notice how the entire time Ginkaku with a G is always relying on Kinkaku with a K. It's consistent. There's at one point where even Ginkaku gets cornered and he's like, "Kinkaku, help me." After Ginkaku goes down, Kakuzu makes the note that this is consistent, that, you know, Kinkaku only transforms into this Bijou state once Ginkaku kicks the bucket or Ginkaku is down. That's why he's like this. And this is pretty impressive, and this is also why we don't really know if Ginkaku has the cloak or what he's like in the cloak. And we do know Kinkaku, we know how dangerous he can be, and you can also just tell how dangerous he is by how the Alliance is so shocked that they managed to beat somebody like this in the way they did. So yeah, Kinkaku was able to corner the 2nd Hokage and 2nd Raikage alongside his brother, who he's just superior to, and that kind of covers Ginkaku as well. Although I do want to touch a brief misconception. The 2nd encounter where Tobirama likely died, you cannot prove Kinkaku or Ginkaku were there, because, well, it's the Kinkaku force. We do not know who this was comprised of, and it's just highly skilled shinobi. This does not mean S rank, just highly skilled. So yeah, we don't know if they're there, and Tobirama doesn't make a remark about their chakra when he likely should have if it was the Nine-Tails chakra, something that Minato can sense from countries away, and they basically have the same sensory feats. So yeah, you only really have that first encounter. But yeah, that's the first war. Moving on to the second war, do you want to go ahead and begin with this same character you touched on this last time? Because he's now kind of standing much stronger.
Yeah, so in the second war, Tobirama is dead. So the second place moves up to first place, the Hiruzen. Now, this should also be a more prime Hiruzen. This version of Hiruzen would have more experience. He would also probably have gone on more missions. All of these different things would be contributing to him having greater wisdom and therefore greater spiritual or mental energy, which would contribute to higher chakra levels. He also training his body would contribute to higher chakra levels via more physical energy. So he's not only going to be probably possessing a better arsenal with learning more ninjutsu as, you know, being the professor and then going on to master every ninjutsu in Konoha. Yes, master, that is stated. That would mean
1,000 genjutsu alone.
1,000 genjutsu alone is crazy. But that would just mean that he should stand above everybody else in the world that would have been participating in this war. You know, at this point in time, I would venture to guess he probably has Enma as well. So Enma with The reason I believe that, by the way, is because it's very unlikely that Hiruzen stepped onto the battlefield in the Third War, as he was, you know, the Hokage, and like at that point in time was a little bit different. He may have had a higher likelihood of stepping onto the battle in the Second War. It's not super likely, but I think it's more likely based on sort of the state of affairs that would have been going on in the world.
Yeah.
And even
also, just like a brief note, just to supplement that, Hiruzen changes the foundations of the leaf.
Yep.
So like he stops putting young children in there. He makes them go through training first. So you could also apply that maybe the Hokage rank, the leader, kind of has to be able to guide them. He shouldn't take the chance of dying in battle.
Yeah,
is kind of
exactly. And this would be based on his own experience watching Tobirama die, sacrificing himself for his platoon. So even if you assume he didn't go into battle in the Second War, he would have been doing that kind of stuff more likely than not prior to the Second War. So having Enma, having more ninjutsu, being physically and, you know, in terms of chakra volume superior than he was prior to this, would just catapult him to that #1 spot. But I think somebody else who has...
Also, just a brief point, the fourth data book says that he surpasses Tobirama from childhood in regards to talent. So this the talent that could be referenced might not be fleshed out in the First War, but could be fleshed out in the Second War here.
100%.
He's much older.
100%. So at this point in time, he's just definitively the strongest person on Earth. So I think at that point in time, it's really difficult to, you know, put anybody above him. But if anybody has an argument for it, I think it would be our second place on this list. Virtue, you want to talk about the next guy on our list?
Yeah. So there's one reason why Hiruzen also might not have stepped onto the war, and it's because of Hanzo the Salamander. The one guy that Jiraiya's like, there wasn't a shinobi in the world that didn't know the name of Hanzo the Salamander. And well, yeah, you're like, okay, but if Hiruzen's really the strongest on the entire planet, why would he not want to face Hanzo? Hanzo's the biggest war boss. He's causing the most trouble. He's trying to conquer all 5 nations. Why not fight him? Well, because of his poison, and he's actually a stronger fighter than the 3 Sannin, but not in the way you might think. And if Hiruzen were to fight him, he'd also have to fight him in the same way that the Sannin did, which you might think is, well, what's different about it? Well, what's kind of weird is we actually know that the third data book makes a note how Hanzo is unmatched underwater due to his mask. So him being underwater, that's where he really shines. Is not on land, but underwater. And this is also highlighted by how whenever the Sannin, and you get the, you know, common interaction about where he names them, they're on a back foot walking out of water, and Hanzo is still standing in water. You get this from both the Jiraiya flashback, where you can see that Ibuse's feet are covered, and you can also see this from Nagato's flashback at the end of the Naruto fight. So yeah, he probably fought all 3 Sannin in water. Therefore, he would have had to fight Hiruzen in water, and he has the poison, which is obviously as deadly as it all gets. He can cover force with this, as shown in the war when reanimated against Kankuro and whatnot. So there's really good arguments as to why Hanzo is the peak here. He's much stronger in this age than he was whenever he's revived or whenever he gets killed by Pain, which is interesting as Pain makes the note that you don't even know why I beat you, which implies that Prime Hanzo might not have been beaten, or at least definitely wouldn't have been beaten in the way that this version did. And it's obviously talking about how Mifune relays him now to be as if he's a dulled blade due to him losing his passion for wanting to take down the 5 nations. So yeah, he's obviously the biggest of the war fronts here, so Hanzo definitely takes second place. Although the Kage that would come just after him and third would be Lord Mu, the Tsuchi Kage, which shouldn't come to many people's surprise. As soon as he's introduced in the 4th war, he's pretty popping off. You know what I'm saying? He's dodging KCM1 Naruto from behind the back with his sensory. He's the only one that stated to, you know, he's fighting Oniki, the strongest of the Kage. He states that Oniki's the only one that could actually handle him. Oniki does the best in the Madara fight. He's definitely the strongest and fastest of the 5 Kage of that generation, which would be consistent with how he has to fight Mu. They even clashed 9 times in particle style. So yeah, you know, so he's able to clash with this Oniki. He's also able to have combat speed relative to KCM1 Naruto, things like this. He obviously has durability negation with the particle style. He can go invisible and things like that. So yeah, but do you want to talk about Mu, who's in 3rd place, and maybe who could actually replace him and his rival, who actually we have in 4th?
Yeah, so next up, or maybe you could put him in this place, however you feel about it, we have Gengetsu. So Gengetsu's weird because it's like, okay, if you just look at their abilities, Mu has a way more cracked arsenal than Gengetsu does with particle style, flight, invisibility, all that stuff. But somehow they managed to kill one another in their final battle. And so it's like, all right, dude, these like little clone things that he makes just had to have been devastating. The water gun he has, like the clam genjutsu, all that stuff, just had to have been insane counters to whatever Mu was putting out. Maybe Mu's an idiot, I don't know, but yeah, Gengetsu does have to be right here alongside him. You can put him above Mu, you can put him below Mu, whatever you want to do, but he is no joke. I mean, if you just look at his feats in the war arc, being able to handle the platoon that he was going up against, telling them how to counter him, and they're still struggling immensely, and like, it's not like there were weak people in that squad either, you know? Gengetsu is an absolute monster, so he has to be right here. And again, if you want to put him over Mu, that's fine. I personally have him slightly below Mu just because it's really weird for him to be above him with their arsenals, you know. But they have to be right next to each other just by virtue of them kind of killing each other. But I do think that...
Well, I was going to say, I was going to even add, are you going to move on or are you going to add?
No, go ahead.
Oh, so what I was going to add is even then, like, Gengetsu's really funny in how he's portrayed through this entire battle. So, like, for example, right, we cut away to, like, the Itachi and Nagato encounter, and then we resume in chapter 552, where we see, like, Gengetsu's just so annoyed at, like, why the entire platoon can't get around his diversion, you know, and his, like, illusion body just passing through several attacks at the same time, and then we cut to the Raikage, who's getting absolutely slammed by the casting net and base, which could kind of like just push that notion of Gengetsu actually being stronger than the third Raikage, which is pretty interesting as well. So yeah, him being relative to Mu is kind of crazy. I think it definitely had to have been like that exploding clone or whatever. So it definitely, I mean, it infinitely explodes. It's actually crazy. So yeah. Anyway, that's why I just wanted to add a little bit to Gengetsu because I think he's quite funny.
Yeah, no, it is really weird, like just looking at their arsenals, that they are relative, because again, just on a surface level, you'd think the guy with particle style, invisibility, flight, all that stuff, it should just be like above the guy who makes these weird exploding clones and like uses mist ninjutsu and stuff, and like this clam that once you can one tap it with a simple rock jutsu, you know what I mean? Like it's just not something that you would think would put him on that level, but it does. But somebody who I actually think might have an argument for being on that same level, but should be a little bit below, is who we have next on our list. You want to go ahead and cover Orochimaru?
Yeah, so the reason why we have Orochimaru here in 5th is, well, because we're not covering 6th and 7th, which would obviously be Tsunade and Jiraiya. You could swap those two however you like. I'd probably put Jiraiya a little bit superior, but yeah. So Orochimaru manages to just break it into the cuff, and the reason as to why is because, well, they could fight Hanzo and not die, and he does actually have poison and things like this, and while he likely did hold back because he notes in the 4th war, that nobody's ever been able to dodge his scythe and sickle, which means he just never used it. So yeah, while he could have been holding back, they are still able to fight him, and fight him to a level where he even wants to grant them this title. So while there's no direct way to say that they'd be stronger than either Mu or Gengetsu, you know, these two Kages, there certainly is a way to say that he is strong enough to be here alongside his Sannin brethren, who are noted in some other guys to be approaching the Hokage's level by this point in time. So there is some good lore here, although they're not quite on that Hokage level, they're not quite above all the other Kage yet. So yeah, it's just a much younger Orochimaru. So yeah, he definitely takes it in 5th place. And now I guess we can move on to the 3rd Great War, where this one's a little more interesting. And I'm gonna let you guys, drum roll please, it's a virtue video. Who do you think's the strongest in the 3rd war? That's right, it's Minato, the GOAT. Alright, God, I'm never beating these allegations. Alright, so yeah, we have Minato here in 1st place, and the reason why is because if you look at the 4th data book, it says that it implies that through the war, it's kind of what earns him the reputation to be praised among all ninja as the greatest in godlike speed, even amongst the elites of the other nations. It also implies how he brought many weaker platoons of shinobi to victory and things like this. Oniki puts a run-on sight order for him. You can even imply that other villages as well put a run-on sight order, as the birthday columns make it plural, so it implies more villages put this run-on sight order. So yeah, that's pretty terrifying. I know Sage just brought up the idea of him being KCM 1 level here, which is something I agree with. I'll let you touch on that in a second. So yeah, this Minato definitely is the strongest here. He gets chosen as Kage, basically directly exiting this battle. And again, the title of Hokage is somebody who stands at the peak of the world. So yeah, Minato basically has to stand there. He replaces Hiruzen, who's almost just as strong. He only has 2 wrinkles here in the Nine Tails attack, and he's confident in taking on a KCM 2 level threat in the full Nine Tails, and he could have been even stronger a couple years prior, whenever Minato first gets the title of Hokage. So Minato is obviously really strong entering here. If you use the Generations game, Minato actually has to beat Hiruzen and Jiraiya. So yeah, Minato obviously is really strong. Do you want to go ahead and touch up on him and some more scaling maybe?
Yeah, so here's the thing. Minato is one of, if not the most cracked people in the series, up until we get to like the Six Paths characters, whenever it just comes to like his overall physicals and arsenal. And what that allowed him to do just in the third war was not only get a fleet on side order, right? Not only just like go platoon helping undermanned squads take down other shinobi, right? Like by himself. This also allowed for him to combat somebody in A who, by the way, the title of Raikage A is the title given to the strongest person in the cloud. Unruly A already has the title of A. We find out that prior to this, he's already being considered for the role of Raikage. And while he's being considered for that, we actually get to see the third Raikage like give him a tour of like some of the most like important places in the village, like where he's going to be sealing away the Eight Tails and all that stuff. So what this sort of narratively would imply is that this version of A, and we'll get into this here in just a second, should be above A3, the third Raikage, which then, if Minato is above him, like dangerously bad, by the way. I actually have a short on why I think like their encounter is much worse than what you guys think. Like I think that Minato just absolutely like murder blitzes him multiple times. Him being drastically above that version of A automatically puts him above the third Raikage A, which then puts him above the Eight Tails, who the third Raikage A was able to like box and fight to a standstill. Oh, and he tanked a Bijou Bomb. So it's like you have this guy in Minato who's able to handle people who are stronger than the third Raikage, stronger than the Eight Tails. The Eight Tails being called B's strongest combat form in the Fourth War, and B still, in that combat form, being able to perform better than KCM1 Naruto. So there's just like a consistent line of scaling for him being way above this level that a lot of people kind of like cap him at. But Minato is just like built different. Do you have anything else to add here?
No, I think that's totally correct. I mean, there is some good points. I mean, literally Dodai, he's trying to pick who B is going to be, who's going to be his partner, and he's like, yeah, hey, he's already in contention for the title of Raikage here, you know, so he's already in run for it. So yeah, I think it's pretty clear, and Minato's definitely way above him, throwing the kunai all the way to the tree as indicated by the sprong sound in the time frame it takes the cloak and fist to connect to the same distances is pretty insane. But yeah, right after that, we do have Hiruzen, and Hiruzen is pretty interesting, although we basically have covered him already. He should have already stood at the peak of the shinobi world under Minato during this time, or even maybe above Minato towards the beginning of the war, we just don't know. But again, he still kind of has the same copy and paste applications as the last one. So yeah, for this one, Hiruzen basically says all the same stuff. He has the same abilities, except now he has a much higher chance of having Enma, even though he likely had it prior as well, and he probably has some more jutsu and things like that he could also utilize to flesh himself out a little bit more and put him above the 5 Kage, which is something he already still stands above in, 15 years. Whenever there's a 10-year gap, he still notes that he would have killed Orochimaru or the other way around. So yeah, right after that we have Hiruzen, and then after that we have Fugaku. You want to go and talk about Fugaku real quick?
Man, Fugaku I think might be one of the most underrated characters in the series, and the reason for it, okay, the reason for it is because he is a lore merchant, all right? It's kind of like Shisui. Which we have a future video together,
Shisui's
bro.
cooler.
Yeah, Shisui's way cooler. But we have a video that's in the works on Shisui, so you guys be ready for that. But
Yeah.
that being said,
Glaze.
just like Shisui, he's kind of a lore merchant in the sense that like we don't really know what he's capable of. All we really have to go off of are like these statements, and you know, a couple of individual things that we get like hints at throughout the series. For example, we know that Fugaku has a Mangekyo Sharingan because it's confirmed in Boruto. Even if you do away with the Naruto anime, which is not canon, if you do away with the Naruto anime, we do get confirmation in the Boruto anime, which is canon, that he does have a Mangekyo Sharingan, and not only that, they have an illustration of it. So like Konoha has a whole file on this, which would mean that he has used it in the past, he's used it in combat, which likely means that he would have developed his Mangekyo abilities to some degree, potentially have some level of Susanoo, even if it's just like the ribcage or something, which would just put him at a pretty impressive level. But he is definitively below the combination of Shisui and Itachi without considering the Mangekyo Sharingan. We know this because Danzo says that those two together, like nobody in the Uchiha clan can match their abilities. So it's like, okay, he doesn't know about Shisui's Mangekyo at this point in time. And so 3-Tomo Shisui and 3-Tomo 11-year-old Itachi above Fugaku, it's like, it doesn't look good, but then when you consider the fact that Shisui's kind of a monster, it makes you feel a lot better about the situation. But yeah, Fugaku's weird. You want to kind of go into some of his more nuanced stuff?
Well, yeah, so, like, you know, as you kind of alluded to, Fugaku kind of stands at the peak of the clan and, you know, kind of hints village, I guess, because, you know, he stands at the, kind of the top of the Uchiha. He's a leader. They don't ever really question him or his leadership or even want to replace him. They all kind of just look up to him. No question asked or anything like that. And you can get the strongest in the entire village stuff from, like, the third anime profile guides and things like that. So he's also an unfavored candidate for Hokage alongside Orochimaru and Minato. So all this to say that him kind of standing at the top of the village can put him above people like this: Hiruzen, Minato, Orochimaru, Jiraiya, Tsunade, Shisui, Itachi, Shikaku, Choza, Anbu, Kakashi, Suguru, Danzo, Hizashi, and Hiyashi. Now here's the problem. Here's the people that it can include: Minato or Hiruzen. And then here's the people it might not include: Anbu, Kakashi, Suguru, and Danzo. So that kind of leaves you with, okay, who's the top of that? Okay, Shisui. So what makes Fugaku's MS special? Well, that's what makes him special, but what makes it actually special itself? Well, it can control the Nine Tails. But what does this mean? Well, it can control the Nine Tails, something that he also demonstrates in the anime through bypassing Itachi's Sharingan. Now, you could say Itachi's off guard because he's in a conversation with his father, so he's not really expecting anything. But if it bypasses Itachi's 3-Tomoe, then that means its highlight you really get is Genjutsu. So, Shisui has the strongest Genjutsu ever. So that means Shisui is superior in Genjutsu. Shisui is also stated to be the top in body flicker. Okay, well, Shisui is also better at kunai throwing than Itachi. And Sasuke notes that Itachi is way better at shuriken throwing than Fugaku, and that it's obvious. So this means that Shisui is just generally better at these normal traits than Fugaku. But so you might be wondering, well, why is Shisui not here? Well, the problem is Shisui's a bit too young to actually be in the Third War. If you do want to cite Ao and his recollection, well, that's actually a much older Shisui in the manga. You'll notice he has a 3-Tomoe, and he's much older when he envisions him and much closer to his death rather than the time that he had to have been whenever he would have been in the Third War, which Sage pointed out to me would have been about 8 years old or something like that. So yeah, Shisui can't really be here, and that's why he's not here, and that's why we do have Fugaku, because there's actually kind of a alluded to top 3 in the Uchiha by Itachi in the second Itachi novel, where Itachi gloats about his fireball and its new size he just reached, and he notes that the only people in the clan who could actually replicate something like this is Shisui and Fugaku. And if you don't know, in the manga and in the third anime profile guides, it's stated that kind of the fireball is a staple for the Uchiha clan. It's actually what's required to be a full-fledged Uchiha shinobi. So it's kind of a measure of power, meaning that Itachi is in the bottom third spot, with either Shisui or Fugaku being above, and we've obviously concluded it's probably Shisui. Therefore, Fugaku falls second, but since Shisui can't be in the war, Fugaku can. Fugaku takes his place, and and Itachi's too young, Shisui's too young, so that leaves only Fugaku to go into this place. If you guys want a Shisui video, let us know, we'll talk about it. But yeah. Anyway, next up we have the Unruly A, who Sage has already highlighted a lot. Do you want to touch on a couple more notes about him before we go to the third Raikage?
Yeah, I mean, A just should be above the third Raikage, which again puts him above the Eight Tails. I mean, this is just super consistent. The fact that not only at this point in time do the Naruto website birthday columns just outright tell us that he's being considered for that role, we get to see it in the manga, and then also it's not only that we get to see it in the manga from that time. Whenever we see the flashback with Dodai where they're selecting the next B to be the partner to A, he already has the title of A, which means that he's already being considered for replacing the third Raikage, but they're looking for his partner, his candidate to sort of, partner with him, because that's sort of a tradition throughout Kumogakure. So whenever they're looking for that partner, B is a child. Like, B is like 10 years old maybe, and then whenever we get the flashback during the war, whenever they're fighting against Minato, when he's still being considered for that position, B is now like a young adult. So what that means is that he's been in contention for this role and has been strong enough to have this title for at least a few years, which just really speaks volumes to his abilities. I mean, he's already got the potentially V2 cloak. A lot of people say he doesn't have it because his hair doesn't stick up, but hey, newsflash, he's wearing a headband. So yeah, like, he has at least V1, potentially V2. He has scaling above the Eight Tails and the third Raikage. Like, it's just pretty definitive that he should be on this level. But you go ahead.
No, I was just gonna make a brief note. You could say that he is Unruly A and even the strongest in the village without scaling him above a perfect Jinchuriki, because like B just prior to the Minato encounter hasn't become a perfect Jinchuriki. He's noted that like or the Jonin who are about to supervise him and wherever he's in his training in the cave or whatever, they're like, yup, this is about where he rampages. So even then, A, even before being established above perfect Jinchuriki, B is already in contention for the spot. You know what I mean? And then, so yeah, next we have the third Raikage. You want me to cover him?
Go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
Okay. So, the third Raikage is a bit interesting. Now, the reason why is because, well, he comes back in the fourth war and probably does the most amount of showings comparison to the other Kage, or the most memorable ones from when you guys are going to think back of that fight. Naruto, he has the iconic scenes where he's just getting absolutely bullied in his KCM1 cloak, although I would like to add that this is a clone who's been split up tons of times and is fatigued and whatnot. So yeah, he also does go into Sage mode, which could give him a more potent chakra than what this part of the, I guess, the KCM1 cloak would give him. And it also enhances his reaction times and stuff. So he's actually able to just kind of like destroy the third Raikage there and even beat up his like best trait, which is his durability. And Naruto's Rasengan is able to crack his elbow, meaning it obviously bypasses the durability. And so yeah, the third Raikage, while he does have a good reputation and things like this, it is in this war where he actually does fight 10,000 shinobi for several days and nights before he obviously drops dead, which is probably because he was getting weaker and they already had a replacement, so he was just willing to take the blunt force like how Tobirama does whenever he's much older with his escort platoon and whatnot. So yeah, the third Raikage definitely takes it in this last spot for the third war. But yeah, ending that off with our final little piece, how would you rank the density of soldiers? Which war actually had the strongest soldiers in it? Like for me, I might say the second, really just because of Hiruzen and Hanzo taking a lot of that blunt force, with Mu and Gengetsu being really good side support. But I could really also see a case for Minato just carrying that hard. What do you think?
I mean, so if you look at just the top level shinobi, it's like, do you think that third war Minato is above what could be a more prime Hiruzen? I don't know. I'd say maybe, because he doesn't have his he probably doesn't have his summons. He probably doesn't have stage mode yet, based on the fact that we know like he signs the Toad Scroll as fourth Hokage, not Minato Namikaze. So, which is really interesting. But that being said, so he may get those later on after the third war. So if that's the case, then you may be able to make an argument that a more prime Hiruzen would be above him, but it's at least contentious. With the speed that he has, with his ability to kind of like just mog on people who are like above the third Raikage, he might just be like that guy at that point in time. If he is, then I would say you combine that with the other people who fought in that war, including like, I don't mean to be, Kakashi Glazer, but like Kakashi, who is just stated in the Naruto website birthday columns to be one of the forefront shinobi in the village when he gets promoted to Jonin. He has the Raiki, or the Chidori rather. He's got the Sharingan. You've got the Fugaku, a young Shisui. You got a lot of really impressive people. Choza, for example, would have fought in that war more likely than not. Now, depending on how strong you think he is at that point in time, totally up for debate. But
strongest war potential.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of really cool people from that. But like honestly, when I look back on it, I think you could argue for any of these. Even, I know you brought up the second war.
Me too.
Hanzo is really important in that as well. But even the first war, bro, it's like, okay, so you have Tobirama.
Tobirama's kind of a menace.
He's a menace. You got Tobirama, you've got Hiruzen, Danzo, Kagami Uchiha, who's like supposed to be narratively like above Shisui, which is kind of insane. And then meanwhile, you might have like a young third Raikage. You've got Kin and Gin. You've got like the second Raikage. Like the first war might have been different. So I think you could really go either.
You could also, again, you could also imply that base Hashirama, or just Hashirama in general, would have been in the start of this war, along with some of the other starting Kage like Retto and Ishikawa and people like that. So you could apply they were also in this war as well. So yeah, there's definitely a case for the first war. I would probably say second, but there's a case for all three now I really think about it.
Yeah, well, it also depends on when you think Sasuke Sarutobi died. Because if you think Sasuke Sarutobi was like, because I believe Sasuke Sarutobi was Hiruzen's father. So realistically, you could say he might have still been around, and like I believe that Hiruzen is stated to have inherited his talent from his father, which would just like lay a huge precedent for like what Sasuke Sarutobi would have been capable of. So if you throw him in with the first war, like dude, they might have just been different, bro. Coming out of the Warring States era, just like it's like that game cutscene where it shows the knights all walking out looking menacing. Dude, like that might have just been what the first war was, bro. Like they just may have been different.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But what did you guys think? There is an argument for all sides, but which side do you guys fit with? Which one do you think is the strongest war, and how would you change these rankings? Would you think that maybe Hiruzen, the young Hiruzen, is actually above Tobirama, or maybe you think Gengetsu or Mu are swappable, or something along those lines? Maybe you're a little weird and think Fugaku would beat Minato. I don't know. Let me know, and make sure you guys go over to Sage's channel. He's got tons of great content. Sure, you guys can learn an absolute lot. He's an absolute G. So yeah, go over to his channel. It'll be linked in the description below, and make sure you subscribe to both of us, or check out some more of my content. You'll find some you love. But more importantly, God bless you all, and love you guys.